platform, how you can create your own automation framework so quick without any problems, and how you can follow the best practices with the code. What is the main idea of the APIs, how you can deal with the different APIs, and how you can handle it. So let's start with the first slides. That's just about the API. What's the REST APIs? Actually, the first point that we need to talk about in the REST APIs is API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it's a software-to-software interface. It's not a user interface. And with the APIs, application can talk and communicate to each other without any user knowledge. And for implementing, by writing the function calls in the program. Okay, so the workflow of the API is actually very simple. So let's imagine that you are going to one of the restaurant and you want to request anything from the restaurant. So you cannot directly request what you want from the kitchen direct. So there is another layer between you as a customer and the kitchen. So you will ask the waiter, I want something, and he will respond, depends on your request. If this thing exists, he will answer you, it exists. If it's not, he will say, no, it's not. And we will see how we can handle all of these from the API perspective. So I know that all of you know what is the type of the requests in the API. So if we can move on with this example for the first request type. The first request type is the GET. So for example, let's say you are in the restaurant and you say, fork please. If there is a fork in the kitchen, he will say, yeah, go ahead, this is your fork. If there is not, he will say no. So it depends on your request, you will get the response, and this is the main idea of the APIs. So you cannot communicate directly with the database, and it's not a good approach. So the API that working to communicate with the database and give you the value of the request that you want. If we moved to the next one, is the post. And I know that you are, all of us know what is the post means. If you need to add something in the if you need to add something in the database, and this is the main idea of the post. So, for example, you can give the waiter like a tip, for example. Just one moment. Okay, so if you want to add something on the database, so you need to use the post API, and in this example, just you are adding something to the restaurant without getting anything. So just he will say, yeah, thank you very much for your tip. And move to the next one is the put. So let's say you are ordering a dish and this dish have, for example, onion or don't have a salt. So you can choose one of the options if you want to add something on your dish or remove something from your dish. So the dishes exist, but you need to do a change on the dish. So in this example, you can say, okay, I want to remove the onion from this dish, or I want to add a salt on this dish. And the last example is the delete. The deleted means I don't want the dish at all. So if I have this dish and I don't want it, I can say, okay, could you please remove it? So he will remove it. And this is the main idea of the APIs with the different request types, post, put, get, and delete, and all of them that working. Like even in the real life, when you do anything in your real life, you will communicate as an API because you cannot do the things directly. There is another layer between you and the things that you need to get. Okay, so this is the request types, and we will move to the response codes. So if you request something, for sure you will get a response code, and depends on your request. And we have three main families in the response codes. And the main families is 200 family, 400 family, and 500 family. And as you see, the main response codes from each family, like 200, we have 200, 201, and 204. And in 201, I think all of us know what that means. 201, it means it's created. And when we say 200, it's okay. And 204, that means no content. So you will get a response, but it's empty, without any content. And if we move to talk about the 400, we have another three main 400 response codes. The 400 itself, it's a bad request. 404, it's not exist. And we have 403 forbidden. And if we move to talk about the 500, we have 500, 502, and 503. 500, that means as the server, internal server error, and we have 502, it's bad gateway, and we have 503 as well. From the automation perspective for the API, how do you know, how many of you do you know what is the automation tools that used for the API? Anyone using any API automation testing tool? What? Postman, yeah, that's cool. Any other tools? Except Postman? What? JMeter, yeah, that's true. Any other tools? Cool, okay. So from the automation perspective, we have many different tools, and we will see in the coming slides what is the tools that we use. But good point to mention that we have Postman, we have JMeter, and we will know another tools in the coming slides. But before that, we need to talk about the benefits of the automation in general, not only in the API. So if we moved, and we can talk about the first thing is cost saving. And as you know, if you have an automation project in your company, within your company, that will save the cost, because the things that's done by the people can be done by the scripts. The second thing is the accurate tests. As all of us know, the human issues should be happened and will be happened, but in the automation, it's a different idea. So in the automation, you have a script and it will be running. If it's failed, it will be failed, but this will reduce the human mistakes. And you can say high API quality and performance. And as all of us know, this will make your application with the high quality, and the performance of your application is a good quality. So you can check the response time and the response code and the response body, everything that's related to your application. Let's move to the next point is intermediate feedback. Sometimes you need to wait till the end of the day to get the feedback from the manual testers. But when you see the automation, and if it fails on the first test, you will see that and you will notice that. So intermediate, we can say immediate feedback, that's very good for us to know where we are before we starting. And we can increase the productivity. So anything will be done from the manual side can be done by the automation, and the manual will focus and work on the other areas. So this will help for sure to increase the productivity. And at the end, we are talking to time to market. And we know that all the companies trying to reach the market as faster as possible, because they need to be in the market before the competitors. Like when we say, well, there is a competitors in the social media, like Instagram and the different applications, we can say, what about Twitter and Facebook? So they are trying to reach the market before the competitors, because this will give a chance to be better than the other companies. Okay, so which tool to use? Which automation tool to use when I start automating my APIs? So all of these questions, as you see, will make you confused, and you will keep asking too many questions in your head. Okay, how can I choose the automation tool to my API project? How should I choose it? So you have different facts, like you want to see what is the complexity, security, scalability, documentation, and so on. We have many factors of choosing the API automation tool, and this will make you confused, like what you see in the picture. You will stay asking yourself and asking the people who's working with you, okay, what should we use? What is the suitable tool for us? And there is three main tools that used in the market, and I would say 90% of the people who's used the API in their work and automate the APIs using one of the three tools that I'll show now. So we mentioned Postman, we mentioned JMeter, but actually JMeter not one of the best tools that used in the market. Postman, one of the top used. Rest assured, one of the top used. And Catalan, one of the top used. And as you see there, we have three competitors in the market, and each tool have advantages and disadvantages. And we will see why we choose this tool to automate our tests, not another tool. Okay, if we go through each tool, let's start with Catalan. What's Catalan? Actually, it's the automation tool, we would say, and it's automating the mobile, automating the web, automating the API, and can recording the sessions, right? And for the Postman, it's API automation tool, can communicate with the server, and you can add your collections. Inside your collections, you can create different requests, and in each request, you can do your assertions. But there is a challenge in the Postman. What is the challenge in the Postman? The main challenge in the Postman is reusability of collections. So you cannot reuse the collection itself. You can reuse an API and you need to write it as a hard code in the JavaScript. And sometimes you cannot call different methods because of it's, first of all, JavaScript, it's not object-oriented. Second thing is Postman, it's hard to be, as an automation tool, to be scalable and to be parameterized. So that's why today we are going to use Rest Assured. Rest Assured, actually, it's a library. It's a Java library. We can use it to be inside our project. Even if your project Maven or Gradle, you can use the dependency inside your project. And Rest Assured will help you to generate your request, to get your response, and to do the assertion depends on what you have in your request. So before we start talking about the Rest Assured, how many of you know the Rest Assured before? Okay. Did you do any POC on Rest Assured? Any POC on Rest Assured? Proof of concept on Rest Assured? Did you try it? You didn't. Did you try it? Did you try it? You didn't. But you know it. Guys there? Okay, so did you find any issues to deal with Rest Assured? Or you didn't go through Rest Assured deeply, just as a main idea? What? Okay. Yeah. What's the? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Today we will see how you can create your project from scratch with Rest Assured without facing any of these problems. It will be like a quick action on each, like you need to do your request, waiting the response, and once you get the response, you will do the assertions depends on the response that you have. Okay, in Rest Assured, just you need to include the library inside your project, and then you can organize your project. So let's move to the project components. What is the project that we will create today? Actually, the project components is, first of all, the build tool. Our build tool will be Gradle. And the second component will be the programming language that we use as Java. And if we move to what's the library that we use as Rest Assured. And at the end, you need to know what is the automation framework that you use. We use here test and G. So this is the components of our project for today. Gradle as a build tool, Java as programming language, and Rest Assured as a library for automation for the API testing. And at the end, we have test and G as an automation framework. And if you are trying to think more about your automation project, you should ask yourself the very important question. The question is, what is the structure of my automation project? You should have a very strong structure. You should take in consideration one of the most important thing is the reusability of the code. So we don't need to write a code for each request. We need something to be centralized. We need something to be reused. We need something to be parameterized. And now we will see what is the structure. Once you create a Gradle project in the IntelliJ or Eclipse, whatever you use as an IDE, you will see that we have different source folders. The first one is source main Java. And under source main Java, what we will create today, we will create a package that's called utils, and another package requests, and the last one is response. Under each package, we will have different classes, and each class have a sum of methods that will be executed depends on our needs. So if we saw what we have under utils, we will have the base class, and this will be just to monitor our test, what we need before each method, what we need to do after each method. And if we go through this second package will be the request. So in the request package, we will have the first class is called request builder. So you need to build your request in one place, not on two different places. You should have one class, and this class will handle the request packaging. And as you see here, we are preparing and packaging the request in this class. And if we move to the second class is the request executor. So after you package your request, you need to execute it. And this class just to execute the request that you have. And in the response package, we will have response handler class. And as all of us know, we will move the value of the response that we got from the request executor in the response handler. So if you want to package the request, you need to use request builder. If you want to execute the request, you need to choose request executor. And once you finish, you need to communicate with the response handler to get the value that you need. Depends on your need. Maybe you need to check the response code, response body, specific value from response body, response time, and so on. So your project should be like this. Okay. Anything else? Yes, we have another source folder called source test Java. Under the source test Java, we will have one package called tests, and under the test, we will have the test class. In the test class, we will create different test methods, and in these test methods, we will just communicate with the classes that we called before. Okay, before we write any line of code, and you should take in consideration what is the coding best practices. You cannot even create your automation project without following the best practices, because if you don't follow the best practices in the coding, you will face a lot of problems in the future, and you will not get any of benefits from the automation. So let's say you are not following the best practices, and you are creating and packaging the request in every single method, and you go forward to update something of the library, and one of the methods that you use in each method is changed. What is the cost of maintenance? What is the cost of change the code? What is the cost of the running? And what is the cost of reach the market? You will lose all of these benefits. That's why we are talking about the code best practices. Let's go through all of the code best practices with the first thing, project structure, as a packages and source folders. And we mentioned that in the previous slide. The project structure is very important for the people who's working with you on the same automation project, because the people will keep asking you, if your project not well structured, will keep asking you, where can I find this class? And where can I find this method? And so on. So if you have a very good structure, you will not have many questions from your people. They just can go through the structure that you have and can find any class that they're searching for. The second thing is the naming conventions. So when I say request builder, for sure you will keep in your mind this class just to build the request. When I say request executor, you will say this is to execute the request. When I say response handler, you will say this is to handle the response that we have. So the name conventions is very important for the classes, for the methods, and for the variables that you create. And dry principle. Anyone know what that means? Dry principle. That's right. Don't repeat yourself. You're right. Don't repeat yourself. So don't write the code twice. There is no need to write the code twice. You can write the code one time and you can reuse it in a different places. So this will make your project more strong. That's right. And scalability. So you should create a project that would be scalable for one case, for million case. So you should take in consideration the scalability is very important point in the coding best practices. And the testing. Oh, we are testers. Should we test our code? Yeah, sure, why not? You should try different test data in your test methods. Because if you get a bad response or a bad response body, you need to take care of this point, because someone will work after you on this code and they try different test data. If they don't have the correct response values from your code, that's not good point for you. So you should test your code even if you are a tester. So we have a unit test for the development, and we have another, not unit test, I would say test in level 2 for the automation engineers or the testers. Okay, so before we start writing any line of code, I would ask you if any one of you guys have the laptop, can scan this code. In this code, this will lead you to the GitHub repository that I have. I have created the project on GitHub. Actually, the project is ready, but is empty. So you have the structure, just you need to initialize your URL, and then you can go ahead with your requests, your response, and how you can practice the API automation testing. Okay, so let me now move from this slide to another slide, to another window. It will be IntelliJ. So all of us know what's the IntelliJ. IntelliJ is an IDE for decoding. So we will see the project that we have already on GitHub, and we will see how we can create the automation project here. But before that, we need to see what we need to test. What is the data that we need to check? What is the actual APIs that we need to see? So for this thing, I would say we will test this scope, not all of the APIs for sure, but this is one of the samples that used in the internet. It's called Pet Store. So in the Pet Store, we have different sections, and we choose the user section, and we will go through the APIs that we have, the endpoints that we have in this section. For example, create user, edit user, delete, and get user. And we will see now what we have. Actually, Swagger is a documentation for the APIs, and you can use it if you want to test something manually as a quick action, let's say. But if you expand any of those APIs, you will see sample request body like this. If you see here, you can see what is the sample of the request body that you have, and this is the path of the API that we are working on. And if you see near the path, you will see the main purpose of this endpoint is to create a user. So we are visiting the Swagger for the documentation to know what is the request body example that we have, what is the path that we need to execute the API on, and you can see what is the expected response. Like when you create a user, you should see it like this. So for example, let's say now, today, we will create a user with ID 200, for example, with username bilal.sqa, and for password 123, and so on. So you will see all of the data that we add in the response body. And we will see how we can deal with the response body and the response code. Okay, so let's move to the IntelliJ. Okay, as you see there, we have the project. As we discussed about the structure, we have in the, actually, we didn't mention one of the classes. Who can say what is the class that we didn't mention? There is a class we didn't mention in the slides. I forgot to mention, by the way. What? That's right, HTTP methods. I didn't mention it in the project structure. So the HTTP methods is not a class, actually. It's an interface. It's enum. And in the enum here, we need to initialize some variables, and we will see what we need to initialize. And we will see what we have in the request builder, in the request executor, and base class, and response handler. Okay, so let's start with the HTTP methods. We mentioned it in the slides: get, post, put, and delete. So we say get, post, put, and delete. Okay, so now just we are simply writing the HTTP methods like get, post, put, and delete. Okay, what is the next step will be? We will move to create our, let's say, organizer of the project. in the basic class, as we discussed before, we need to add annotations. And this is what we use in the test and G. So in the basic class, just we will create a small method that will be called before method. And say public void before method. Okay, so what we need to add in before method? We just need to add just one thing inside the before method. Yeah, just a moment. We need just to make it more bigger. Is it clear now? Right? Cool. Okay. So what we have in the before method, just you need, before each method, you need to let your application know what is the base URL of the project you are working on. So the base URL in our case is, we can find it in the top of the screen here. So this is the main URL, the base URL. So it will be bitstore3.swagger.io over API over version 3. Say rest assured base URI. Anything else in the base class? No, that's enough. So we will keep it in the, in the before method. Do we need to add anything else? No, we don't. Okay, and because the base class is doing the monitoring of the test, so we need to add all of the objects in the base class to be accessible from the test classes, because all of the test classes will be extends from the base. So we will start with the request builder and request executor and response handler. So this is all of the objects that we need to create, and this for sure will help in test classes, so we can use it as an object and we can work on it once we need it. Okay, so I will say in the request builder what we need, and the request executor what we need to do. So in the request builder, actually we need to packaging our request. So how we can start with packaging our request in the request builder? So first of all, you need to say the path will be string, and we will have JSON object request body, body, JSON object. And in the request builder, just you need to add a setters and getters for all of these variables. So you have two options: to do it hard-coded or to use the shortcuts of IntelliJ. To do it hard-coded, just you need to create public set path, set request body, set request method, and get each of them. But if you want to do it automatically, let's say, you can just right-click here and say generate getters and setters, and you can select all and say okay. So as you see there, without any effort, I just create the setters and the getters for each variable that I create. So now I can set the path, I can set the JSON, the request body, I can set even the HTTP method that I want. So what we need after that? Actually, we just need to go through the request executor to see what we need in the request executor. Actually, the request executor will not work directly with one of these methods. No, will work with the class itself. So all of the data, all of the methods like set path, set type, get type, and so on, all of these methods are inside the request builder. And the request executor will communicate with the request builder only. So what we need to create in the request executor, we will say here public void request. And before we execute the request, we need to get all of the data that's related to the request. So from where we can get all of these data? From the request builder. So we will say request builder. Okay. And what is the main question that we need to ask the request builder? We need to ask the request builder, what is the HTTP type that you have? So depends on the HTTP type that the request builder have, we will execute our request because we have different types of requests. So we have post, get, put, and delete. So we will create a switch statement. And inside the switch statement, what we will have request builder dot get request method. So inside the switch statement, we will have different cases. And for sure, all of us know what is the cases. Sure? What's the cases? Because we are receiving the request method. So we will have, anyone can answer? What's the cases in the switch statement? Exactly. So the type of the request method. So we would say case. And as you see, you have the options. Case delete, case put, case get, and case post. So we will start with get, and we will have something inside it. We will see what we will have. And we have another case for post, and we will break. And we will have another case for put, and for sure we'll break. And at the end, we will have case for delete and break. Okay, what we need to add inside each case? What we have inside each case, we will get the data from the request builder object, and we will execute our request, and we need to save it inside a response. But before that, we need to do small change on the base class. In the base class, just we need to create a variable that will be, public static. Response. So all of these will be saved in the request executor here. Okay, so here we will say response, and for sure we need to add it as a static equal. What's equal? Equal given dot, and just let's import the given from the rest assured. And this is like you are trying to say a scenario. Given what you give dot body. How we can get the body? From the request builder object. So we will say request builder dot get request body. And then because of all of the request types will be JSON, so you need to specify what is the content type that you have in your request. So you will say dot content type, and you can say here content type dot JSON, and then dot, what's the HTTP method type here? It's get, so you will say get. And what is the path? Will be request builder dot get path. So as you see here, the data of our request will be, or the value of our request will be saved inside the response. So we will repeat the same line, but we will change one thing. The thing that will be changed is the request type. So in the first one, we are saying get. So just we will change this to be post and to be put and delete. as you see there, we are executing our request. We are receiving the object from the request builder. We are getting any data that we want, like the path, like the body of the request, and for sure we are mentioning that the HTTP method or request method in the switch statement itself. Okay, so we are finishing everything in the base class. We are finishing everything in the request builder itself. We are finishing everything in the request executor. And for sure, we will move forward to work on the test class. So how we will set the data in the request builder, and then how we will call the request executor, and then how we will deal with the response handler. But before we go to the test class, so we will say we need to create our methods in the response handler class. So what should we have in the response handler class? I think all of us will say 3 main methods. What's the main methods that we need in the response handler? What do you need from the response? What do you need to check? Status code, response body, response time, and if you want to get a specific data from the response body. So you are expecting to, if you send a key, you will get a specific value. So let's say you are trying to get the ID, so you will get a value from this key. Fine? So I think we can take a break, and then we will continue after 10 minutes, or 5 minutes, 10 minutes? It's after 5 minutes, so we can take a break. For any questions, I'm here. It depends on the type of the methods. We are executing the request. So we have if you take a look in the first part of the request from given till the content type, it will be the same for all. But what we change, the type of the method. So it depends on the method that we get, we will simply execute our request. And just we are getting the path from the request builder. Okay, so after that, we need to go to the response handler because we need to get the data from the response. So what is the data that's needed in the response actually? We will start with the first important thing in the response. It's the response or status code. You can call it status code or response code, whatever you want. And we can get the full of the response body, and we can get the response value, specific response value. So let's move to the response handler class, and inside it just we will create public integer get status code. Okay, so this method is integer method, so it should return a number. And what is the number? If you remember what we reviewed in the slides, we have different response codes families like 400, 200, 500, and so on. So in this method, simply we will say we should return, and we will mention response dot. Okay, response will be filled because it's need to be imported as a static because it's declared in the base class, if you remember that. So we will say import from the base class and dot get status code. So it's very simple. And as you see there, we are returning the value of the status code by this method. Okay, what is the next method will be? Will be public, for example, string get response body. So it will be return, sorry, we mistake is here. Okay, we would say response dot get body. In this case, it will return a body, but as an object. So we need to return it as a string. So just once you say dot as, you will see as a string. So we return it as a string. So here we can return the whole of the response body as a string, just to make our code formatted. Okay, and the last method will be, we will return the value, a specific value from the response body, but it will be returned as an object. Why we need to return it as an object, not as an integer or string? Because sometimes you will have in the response body different data types. Maybe it will be integer and maybe it will be string. So you need to return it as an object, and then you can cast this object to string or integer, depends on what you have in the expectations. So we will say public and object get response value. And here we need to receive a string for the key. Because, you know, in the response body, you will have a JSON response, and this JSON response is 2 parts, key and value. So you need to send the key, and you will get the value, depends on the key that you send. And then I will say return response dot get body dot JSON path. So here I convert the JSON body to be JSON, the response body to be JSON, and then I can say get the path is the key. So as you see there, we have this method will be returning the value of any key that you send. So now we have the full of the methods that we need, and we will add just another method. The method will be, what is the missed method here? We have another method we need to add. What do you think? Which method that we need? We're returning the response body, the status code, the response value for a specific key. We need to check another thing. What is it? Response time. That's right. So we need to create a public, long get response time, and we will say response.get time, and you can here specified if you want to get time dot something or get time, and you can specify what is the time unit. You can retrieve the time by milliseconds or seconds if you want. So you would say, and here you can say time unit dot what? For sure, not for dot days or dot hours. For sure, we will not use dot days or dot hours. There is no API returning by dot days. Even if you are trying to move from country to another country, it will be applicable less than that. So we will say in milliseconds. Why we say it in milliseconds? So we should say return. I'm sorry for that. Return. Okay. So now it's okay. Why we choose milliseconds, not seconds? What? Yeah, that's right. Because almost we are talking about 50% or 60% of the APIs will be returning in less than one second. So if you are using the time unit by second, all of the values will be returning as a 0. So you will not do any assertions on. So the expectations to be like, for example, less than 50 milliseconds or less than 1000 milliseconds, it means 1 second. Okay? So in this way, you can get the specific response time, and you can guarantee 100% you will get the response time for your request. Okay, so now we are handling everything in the response handler, request executor, request builder, and in the basic class. So just we need to work in the test class, and we will see now how we can deal with the test class with different test data. So let's move to the test class, and inside the test class just we will create an annotation in test.ng. It's called a test, so you can let your class know this is a test method, so it can be run. But if you don't have this annotation, this method will not be run. So I will say public void and create user. Why we say to create user? Because as you know, we decide to use this API to create a new user. Okay, so what is the data that's needed in this request? We need the ID, username, first name, last name, email, password, phone, and the user status. So we will not create with the same test data that we have here, just we will change some data to be checked from our side as well. And we will see how. So we have ID, username, and the ID is integer, username, and first name, last name. Okay, so I'll say here, just First of all, what is the type of dot set request method? What is the request method here? Back here. What's the request method? What's the HTTP method? It's post, right? So I will say here, I have two options. I can say HTTP methods.post, or I can say post itself and I can import it. Best way to use it post, because you don't need to mention that HTTP methods.post, HTTP methods.get. So you can say post. As you see, it's here, but you can remove it and then you can do that. It will be imported automatically, as you see in the line number 5. It's imported as a static import. So there is no need to call HTTP methods.post. And if you want to use all of the HTTP methods that you have in your enum, so you can say, instead of dot here, and I think all of you know that, sorry, you can remove post from here and you can say star. So it will be anything inside the HTTP method will be directly added. So like the get, put, and delete. And then what you need to say, you would say after you initialize the what is the HTTP method, you need to add your JSON object, the response, the request body. So you will say request. Sorry, just we need to initialize it in the base. Sorry. Okay, and in the test class, you will say here request body dot. And now you can use both key and value. Depends on the value that you have. So we will start with the data that we have. What we have here, we have the ID. So we will say ID, and we would say, for example, 100. And then we will initialize all of the data. Okay, so we copied all the keys that we have, and then we need to manipulate the data that we need to send in the request. So as you see there, we just have two integer values. The first one is the ID, and the last one is the user status, and the other data is a string, our string. So we will go, and we would say 100, and then in the username, we will say Bilal.sqa2, for example. First name will be Bilal. This is my name, actually. Okay, and the email. Okay. At gmail.com. It's not my email. Okay, and the password will be string 12345. The phone as well will be string 12345, and the user status will be 1. So in this case, we are setting the HTTP method, filling all the test data that we need to add, and then we will say request builder dot set request body, and we can send the request body itself, and then we will say request builder dot set the path, and the path will be user. So now we have all of the needed data the request body, the request path, or the path of the URL that we are working on, and we have the parameters that we need to send in our request. So now we will create an assertion to check what we have in the response from the different point of view, response code or status code. We need to check the response time. We need to check a specific response value from the response body. So what we need to do, first of all, we need to take the sample response that we have in the documentation in a Swagger, and we need to go to the website that's called JSON Path Finder. This will help you to get the path, the exact path for each key that you are searching for. So if you go to the Swagger, you can copy the whole of the request, the response body. Okay, let me just, I don't like to work on the mouse pad. So if you go to this website, just replace it like this. So you will see all of the response data that you need to check. So for example, if you want the ID, username, and so on. So if you have complex response body, you will see even the path of each key that you are searching for. In this case, we have a very simple. So you just, if you want anything, for example, the ID or the username, just you can take starting from the part after dot. Anything after dot, just you need to copy it. Depends on the data that you are searching for. So what you need to check, we need to check if the ID is the same ID that we are searching for. And for example, the status code is 200 after creating a user. And we need to check, let's say, if the response time less than 900 milliseconds, for example. Let's start with that. And here you can remove assert dot like this, and you can alt enter, you can import it as a static. So it will be imported from the, you can choose one of the imports that you need, and because we are working on test and G, so you need to take a look on test and G assertion. And this is the test and G assertion that we are searching for. So you will say here, response handler dot get response code or status code. What is the status code that expected here? 200. The user is created. Okay, so this is the first assertion. And let's copy. And then we need to paste, for example. And we don't need to check the status code. We need to check get response value. Which value that we need to check? The ID. And just we need to pack to the Swagger to see it will be packed as an integer. Cool? So we will say here, what is the ID is 100. So we'll say here 100. So now, if you want to run your code, just you need to, just let me remove the configuration and we can follow it together. If you want to run method itself. So you can click on, let me just apply, do it together. Okay. So you can add configuration, click on plus button, you can choose test and G, and you can name your configuration whatever you want. So I will name it SQA. And what is the test kind? For us, we will use method. Okay, from which class? Test class. What is the name of the method? It will be create user. And you will see this invalid scope specified. This is error in the bottom. So how you can solve this error? Actually, you want to set the class path of module. You need to ask IntelliJ, this is my class path of module. If you choose test, it will be, this error will be gone. And now, we will not run. Actually, I will do debugging. So you will see the value of response handler itself, and we can see what is the value of response handler for each key. So I will set a breakpoint here. Well, actually, we forget something. We should say here request executor dot request, and we should say request builder. After we packaging the request, we didn't execute the request. So you should say that we need to execute the request by sending the request builder object, and then everything will be good. So I will set the breakpoint here, and then I will debug. Hopefully it will not be filled. It's filled. Just a moment. Let's debug from here to see what is the value of request builder. Okay, request executor. Okay. Should work without any problems, I think. What we have in test class. Okay. Yeah. Let's rerun it again now. Yeah, okay. So now it's filled because of the response code is 500, and we will check now why. But the problem was related to the request body. We should ask the request body to be to JSON string. So we just need to say it's dot to JSON string. Okay, and here just we need to check what we have in the response. Why it's 500, it's returned with 500. We need to recheck what is the data that we sent. What we have here, it's actually, it's over user, okay. I don't think so that we have any problem. Okay. Okay. Let's see before that. So if we debug it, and just need to request. Okay, response handler dot get response body. Okay, there was a problem in the request body itself, so we need to check what we have in the response body. Is the first name, last name, if everything is okay, email, password is okay, phone number is okay. I think no, there is no problem in the request body itself, and user status, and this is the path. Okay, so it's returned 500 in the request. So we need, I think, to change the test data that we have. Maybe we need to choose the different ID, for example, 10. Okay. So response handler dot response code. So still 500. There was a problem in the website itself. Let me check it just one moment. Okay, username, email, ID. phone number, user, status, password, last name, first name. Everything is okay, looks from the, okay, and in the base class, okay, it's a version 3. So it looks without any problem. Okay, let me try to open the in a new window. Just let me check that this data that I use in a different project. It will be the same. Looks without any problems. Okay. Let me copy all of the request. Should be the same. Request builder. Let's run it again. I think maybe there is a problem with the, yeah, there is a problem with the website. Is the returning 500, it keeps returning 500 because of the problem in the Swagger documentation of the bit store. And this is really weird because it was working without any problem. I don't know why. And should be without any problem. Yeah, as I see, there is no problems in the code. So it should be returned as a 200, but the website is down now, so I can't say, I can't do anything with the website because it's down. So you can assert your response code, you can assert your response body, depends on what you have, but you never know what's happening in the website that we use. And we can do a comparison between, if you want, between the code that we used before. It's like the same without any problems. And I would say it's really weird because of, okay, the URL is the same without, there is nothing. Okay. Oh, the request, even if you see, if it's the same request without any problem. And we can run it from this method if you want. Okay, let's do it again. That should be returned 500 again. Yeah, let me see this. Yeah, so it's down from the website itself, so we can't do anything with the website because it's down. We are sorry about that, but this is the idea of the automation for the REST APIs. Using REST Assured. So this is how you can build your automation framework, but we are sorry about that. This is coming from the website that we use, and maybe we can change if you want. Just we can change to another website. For example, I remember a website called DrakeRes. Maybe we can use it. Just a moment. Okay, so we changed the website to another website. So we will try to create a user from a different website, and this is the data that we need, just name and job. So we need to remove all of the data that's not needed at this moment. Okay, so here we are adding the request, and just we need to check if the response is 200. So let's try this website. Okay, it's 201 because it's 201. This is the response code, so it works. So the problem is from the website that we use. So in this case, we are trying to create another user with different website that we use. And as you say, just we are doing assertion for the response code. It's 201, the user is created. And you can check the response body, like the name and the job. So in this case, we will do like a debug. We will see what is the value of the user that we create. So you can execute the request. And after it's executed, you can say response handler.get response body. And as you see here, we are creating a new user with the name Bilal and the job is QA. So we can do another assertions under the status code assertion, and we can say assert equal response handler dot get response value, which value that we need to check, and what is the data. So the value that we need to check is the name, and the name will be the same name that we use. So we will say here is name. And because of we are returning an object and we need to convert this object to be string, so we will say here dot to string, and in the second part we will say the name that we use is my name. So we will say Bilal. And now we can run our code again to check if this is the expected value and it's work without any problem. Okay, what if we remove anything from this word like BI? So it will be failed, and we will see the reason of the failure in the console like this, as you see. So the expected is BI, and we found Bilal. So the user is created with a different name. So as you see there, this is the full cycle of the example for creating an API automation script from scratch for any API that you will face, the REST APIs actually. And you can go through this project, and I will push this project to the GitHub with the architecture, the full architecture with this example, and you can just change the base URL in the base class, and you can change the test data, and happy testing. You can test your website or your APIs if you want. And again, sorry for the things that happened, but this is out of our hand because of the response code from the documentation that we use. So we fixed the problem by using a different website actually, and that was working without any problems. And as we discussed before, if you want to check a different measurement, like we need to check, for example, the response time. So let's say, is it correct to use assert equals for the response time? Yes or no? And why? Yes or no, and why? Is it correct to use assert equal for response time? No. Why? Thank you. So just you can say less than or more than or greater than, right? So it's not good approach to use assert equal because it will be failed every single time because you cannot determine what is the response time. So you should replace assert equal with assert true. Cool? Assert true. And then you will say assert true response time, for example, less than 2000 milliseconds. And you will see that if it will work or not. Yeah, it's good API. It works less than 2 seconds it takes. Let's say 20 milliseconds. Do you think it will fail? I think that there is no API in less than 20 milliseconds. Yeah, for sure. So it says, no, it's not true. There is no API less than 20 milliseconds. So just, this is the testing of your code. When I said in the slides, test your code, this is how you can test your code. Set positive data, negative data, and check if your code will work on both. So in this case, yeah, we catch the bug because we set an not real data for the response time. And we do the same for the assert equal for the name. So that's why you need to test your code when you write the automation script for any platform, API, mobile, web, or even if you are working on a different ideas like the database and so on. So I would move back to the slides. And for sure, I will push the code today to the same QR code that I show here. So you will see it after the conference direct. So you can check all the APIs and you can ask any question if you want, but let's move to the next. So what we learned in this workshop, actually, first of all, we learn what is the REST APIs, and I think all of you guys know what is the REST APIs. Actually, just we review what is the REST APIs from different point of view. We saw what is the API workflow and how it works. We take very simple example about like the restaurant and how you can work as a customer in the restaurant, and how to select automation tool and automate your API, why we need this tool and why we don't need other tools, what is the advantages and disadvantages. And the last thing, how to select tool and automate your APIs. I repeated 2 times. I don't know why. So thank you very much for, first of all, to you guys to attend this workshop. And you can scan this QR code. It's my Telegram. And I'm happy to hear any question from your side, guys. Thank you very much.